The night was quiet, almost impossibly so, in Los Angeles on June 25, 2009. A world-famous performer lay behind closed doors, the hum of a nearby freeway the only thing interrupting the stillness. Fans slept uneasily in distant time zones, unaware that the rhythms of pop culture, media frenzy, and international intrigue were about to collide. But how could someone who had danced across stages worldwide, who had captivated millions, be swallowed by shadows in the very city built on dreams? The details that unfolded in those final hours still raise questions, some small, some seismic, some that touch the very systems meant to protect life itself. Could something so carefully documented still hide a mystery? From private medical staff to public headlines, every moment seemed orchestrated yet chaotic, every account conflicting, and every action scrutinized through the lens of a global audience. Yet the world watched, captivated, not just by the tragedy of a man's death, but by the unfolding story of power, secrecy, and accountability in an industry that trades in illusion. How did events spiral so quickly, and what truths remain buried beneath the noise? If stories like this fascinate you, subscribe to join us as we uncover hidden global truths. Tell us, where are you watching from? Could this happen in your country too? And as we trace the path of those final hours, you'll see the interplay of human error, ambition, and a culture obsessed with perfection. By the end, you might never look at celebrity, medicine, or the headlines the same way again. Long before the world woke to the shocking news, the corridors of Michael Jackson's rented Holmby Hills home whispered of unease. Staff moved quietly, their footsteps measured, their voices barely above murmurs. There were subtle signs, missed doses, erratic sleep, sudden fatigue, that to an outside observer might have seemed trivial. But to those closest, the pattern was alarming. How could a man who had captivated audiences for decades, who had danced through pain and glory alike, now appear so fragile in private? In the shadows of luxury, the very mechanisms meant to safeguard life were faltering. Outside, Los Angeles carried on, oblivious to the gravity inside. Security cameras caught the comings and goings of medical staff, personal assistants, and friends, but the footage told a story only partially understood. Internationally, fans scrolled through updates, tweets, and forum posts, sensing something was amiss even before the headlines confirmed it. A quiet unease rippled from private homes in Beverly Hills to streets in Tokyo, London, and Johannesburg. Why did it feel like the world knew the truth before anyone dared speak it aloud? Doctors debated dosages in hushed tones, schedules were changed, monitored, and then altered again. There were conversations that never left rooms, instructions that seemed contradictory, and yet, all was under the watchful eyes of those who had sworn to protect him. A paradox emerged, a global icon surrounded by care, yet slipping through the cracks of that very protection. Something was moving beneath the surface, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift that would, in hours, transform into a calamity. The calm of that morning was deceptive. By the time the sun climbed higher, invisible forces, human decisions, lapses, and unspoken tensions, were already setting the stage for a tragedy the world would witness in stunned silence. By mid-morning, the house seemed alive with urgency, though outwardly, nothing appeared unusual. Medical equipment hummed quietly in the corners, while assistants moved between rooms with practiced precision, their faces betraying tension they could not voice. The carefully constructed routines of care were fracturing under unseen pressures, time, expectation, and the invisible weight of fame. What could have been simple caution now carried the weight of 1,000 eyes, all waiting for the next sign. Outside, the world spun on. Fans tweeted anxiously, international media outlets speculated wildly, and investors in entertainment and music industries began recalculating what the sudden absence of a global icon might mean for record sales, tours, and cultural capital. The quiet, clinical battles within the home contrasted sharply with the erupting storm of global attention, a paradox few could fully grasp. How could one man's private struggle ripple across continents, altering perceptions, economies, and even policies? Those present recall moments of hesitation, a pause too long before administering medication, a question left unanswered, a glance exchanged that carried more meaning than words could hold. And yet, there was also determination, a desperate attempt to restore balance before it was too late. In the background, silent alarms of human error began to sound, barely audible over the hum of life outside. Each small choice, each quiet decision, stacked imperceptibly, tilting the scales toward an outcome no one intended, yet could not prevent. The tension was almost cinematic, invisible threads connecting care, fame, and consequence, pulling taut as the day progressed. And in that quiet, behind closed doors, the first irreversible domino had already begun to fall. By the early afternoon, news of Michael Jackson's condition had begun to leak, first through whispered reports, then through social media and 24-hour news cycles. Across the globe, screens lit up with speculation. Tokyo office workers paused mid-meeting, London commuters scrolled their phones anxiously, Johannesburg radio hosts repeated fragments of unconfirmed updates. The world was watching, but no one truly understood what had happened behind those closed doors. How could private medical choices become a story with international consequences so swiftly? Inside the house, a tense choreography played out. Paramedics arrived, medical staff exchanged hurried instructions, and assistants tried to navigate a space between urgency and protocol. Every second was scrutinized, every gesture amplified. It was no longer just a home, it had become the epicenter of a global spectacle, where human error and systemic oversight collided under the unforgiving lens of fame. Meanwhile, international media analysts debated timelines, legal experts speculated on liability, and fans around the world posted tributes and prayers, unaware that the story they were witnessing was far more complex than headlines suggested. The paradox was striking. A man celebrated worldwide for his art was now reduced to a series of decisions, errors, and interventions that no audience could control. Across continents, investors, journalists, and officials recognized the unfolding tension, how the ripple effects of a single life could strain institutions, media credibility, and cultural memory simultaneously. What no one expected was how quickly personal tragedy would merge with global fascination, creating a narrative that blurred lines between fact, rumor, and perception. As evening approached, the situation escalated with an almost unbearable intensity. Ambulances navigated congested streets, cameras followed every movement, and officials in distant capitals watched through a lens of disbelief. In Los Angeles, law enforcement coordinated quietly behind closed doors, balancing protocol with the prying eyes of a global audience. Every decision felt magnified, every misstep magnified even more. Yet, in the midst of chaos, a disturbing clarity emerged. The very systems designed to preserve life were straining under the weight of fame, expectation, and secrecy. International reactions unfolded almost instantly. Analysts in London debated the implications for celebrity health protocols. Media outlets in Sydney and Dubai dissected minute-by-minute developments, and fans from Lagos to Sao Paulo speculated endlessly, searching for fragments of truth in a storm of rumor. The personal had become political, the local global. How could the fragility of one man's health ripple across continents, touching economies, media credibility, and cultural consciousness simultaneously? Within the house, medical staff worked frenetically, their every move scrutinized by history in real time. The tension between care and control, knowledge and uncertainty, human intention and unintended consequence, became almost palpable. A quiet, relentless question lingered. Could anyone have truly prevented what was coming, or was this collision of human fallibility and global attention inevitable? In that hour, the world watched as fate and decision-making intertwined, setting the stage for a tragedy that would resonate long after the lights dimmed. When the world learned of Michael Jackson's passing, it felt as if time itself hesitated. Streets from Los Angeles to Lagos froze, televisions flickered with endless footage, and social media erupted with grief, disbelief, and questions that demanded answers. Fans wept in their bedrooms, commuters paused mid-step, and offices emptied as if the news had pulled the air out of the room. Yet amid the global shock, the true story, the quiet unraveling of events inside that house, remained almost invisible, known only to those who had been there in the tension and the hush. In the echo of tragedy, the small, human details surfaced. The medical equipment left humming in empty rooms. A discarded syringe on a counter. The soft, frantic voices of staff trying to navigate care and protocol under pressure. Each overlooked signal, each misstep magnified, became a haunting reminder of the fragility behind celebrity, the precarious line between fame and human vulnerability. Across continents, people wondered, could this happen anywhere? Could the systems that safeguard life fail so quietly, yet so completely? The world was connected by grief, yet separated by the hidden truth. Even as tributes poured in, from candlelit vigils in Paris to quiet memorials in Manila, the lingering questions refused to fade. Headlines told a story of loss, but the shadows revealed a deeper narrative, a man caught between expectation and fragility, a culture obsessed with perfection, and a network of human decisions whose consequences stretched far beyond one house in Beverly Hills. In the silence after the spotlight, viewers around the world were left with a paradox, a life larger than the world, yet as vulnerable as any of ours. The resonance of those final hours would echo uncomfortably in every corner of fame, media, and human oversight. As the initial shock settled, the global conversation shifted from spectacle to reflection. Documentaries, investigative reports, and countless analyses emerged, dissecting every moment of Michael Jackson's final hours. From New York boardrooms to small-town cafes in South America, people debated responsibility, questioned protocols, and reconsidered what it meant to protect life under the glare of fame. The world realized that the tragedy was not just about one man. It was about the fragile systems, human errors, and cultural pressures that allowed such a collapse to occur. Amid the public discourse, the human consequences remained visceral. Staff who had raced through those hours carried a quiet, heavy weight. Friends and family grappled with guilt, regret, and unanswerable questions. Fans mourned not just a legend, but the unknowable struggles that had preceded the headlines. And somewhere in that global grief, viewers were forced to confront their own complicity in the culture of celebrity, our fascination, our obsession, and the expectations we place on icons who are, at the core, human. In the stillness that followed, one truth became clear: Michael Jackson's final hours were more than an isolated tragedy. They were a mirror, reflecting the interplay between fame, mortality, and accountability in a world that watches, comments, and judges from afar. And though the spotlight had dimmed, its afterimage lingered, challenging us to reconsider how we see the lives behind the legends, and what responsibilities we share collectively in the stories we consume. In the quiet that followed, the world was left holding pieces of a story larger than any one headline. Michael Jackson's final hours were a collision of fame, human fragility, and global scrutiny, reminding us that behind every icon lies a life as complex and vulnerable as our own. Across continents, in every language, the echoes of those hours linger, a subtle reminder that our systems, our choices, and our obsessions are interconnected in ways we rarely see. The spotlight may fade, but its lessons endure, quietly shaping how we understand fame, mortality, and responsibility.